Good afternoon, everyone. This is Q Wilson, Senior Training Associate here at Out and Equal, and I'll be your moderator for today's call. Today's topic is bisexuality in your workplace, and we have three panelists here today who will be discussing bisexuality in the workplace, as well as the events that are taking place this week, which is Bisexuality Week. So before we get started with that, I'd like to go over a few announcements for Out and Equal. Our next Trainers Forum will be on October 13th at 1 p.m. Of course, on November 3rd through the 6th is the Out and Equal Annual Workplace Summit, which is taking place here in San Francisco, and that's why we have the fabulous promo video. So we'll have also leadership seminars on Monday, which is an all-day thing. So if you hadn't thought about that, you can go back and register and add that to your registration. Our next town call will be on November 20th, and that will be on transgender issues, and we're talking about the next steps to take within the workplace. Also, if you want to find out any more information about what's going on at Out and Equal, go to our website, please, at outandequal.org, and check out the training events and our upcoming events or our archives, and also you can find information on regional affiliates, our career link, as well as the Out and Equal Workplace Summit. So this call is a broadcast audio call. You should be able to hear us through your speakers or a headset attached to your speakers. This is also being recorded for later use. You can find a copy of the recording on our website under the training section. And we'll also have a few polls here coming up. When the polls come up, please select your answer and then hit submit so that we can process those, and we'll keep that going. So to get us started, I'm going to start off with a poll. Okay, so that the first question is, what community identity label do you use for your sexual orientation? And choose the one that's best fits for you. And thinking about it, if you're wondering about community identity labels, these are labels that are umbrella terms within a community. So it's bisexual, lesbian, asexual, gay, or straight. Choose your answer, hit submit. And we have, let's see, about 48 folks have responded so far, with the largest percentage being bisexual. And then we've got about, 22% lesbian, 22% gay, and about 24% identifying as straight. So we'll give people just a few more moments. All right. And for those of you who need the call-in number, I will be sending that to you shortly. Let's see. All right, so we're going to move on to the next poll. If you selected bisexual in the last poll, what personal identity label do you use for your sexual orientation? And select all any of these that apply for you. And that's going to be pansexual, fluid, bisexual, queer, homosexual, polysexual, sapiosexual, omnisexual, mini-gender loving, heteroflexible, or homoflexible. So select all of the answers that fit for you and hit submit, and we'll get those going. All right, we've got about 19 people have responded so far. And yes, that's me feverishly typing in the background. Okay, there we go. So we've got about 20 people that have responded to that so far, with most of those folks responding as the personal label that they choose is bisexual with 81%, and the next largest percentage we have is fluid. So, all right, we've got 22. All right, so we're going to move on to the next poll. Where is your office where you normally work located? Is your office in the U.S. or are you outside of the U.S.? And if you're outside of the U.S., chat in where you're located, please. Again, choose the answer that fits for you. Hit submit. Okay. And for those folks calling in from out or listening in outside of the U.S., remember to chat in your location for us, please. I've got one person from reporting saying Canada. And let's see. So I have one other person on the call right now who's said they're from outside of the U.S., but they haven't typed in where. So the majority of us on the call today are in U.S. So, okay. So we're moving on to the next poll. How many bisexuals are you aware of in your ERG? Your answers choices are none that I know of, 1 as far as I know, 2 to 5, or more than 6. Select the answer that's appropriate for you and hit submit. And so we have, with about 34 responses in, which is about half of the folks on our call today, we have about 60% that say none that they know of. 1, as far as I know, is about 25% of the group. 12% say 2 to 5, and 5% say 6 plus. And an ERG is the name that we use for an employee resource groups. They're also sometimes called affinity groups or business resource groups. And Denise, that number is not the number that everyone needs to be calling in for theirs, actually. There's a separate number for the folks to call into. Okay, so we've got one more. So the last question that I have here is, how are bisexuals like icebergs? So bisexuals are melting. Bisexuals tend to be bottom-heavy. You don't see very many bisexuals, or most of a bisexual is hidden. Choose any of the answers that you feel appropriate or fit, that you think do, and hit submit. And with about half of our attendees reporting in, wow, we've got 22% saying you don't see very many bisexuals, and the largest percentage of that is 83% saying that most of bisexuals is hidden, and that would be the case. So that would be our little thing. And I'm going to go ahead and turn, now that we've done our polls, I'm going to turn this over to Heidi Green, who will introduce the rest of the folks to us and get us started. Heidi?
Great. Thanks a lot, Q. I appreciate your going through all those polls. And thanks, everybody, for participating. The last one sort of sounded a little like a riddle, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. But first, what I wanted to do is introduce myself. I'm Heidi Green. I am the chair of the Bi Advisory Committee, which has been in existence for about 4 years now, maybe 5. And we work with Out and Equal to help Out and Equal better support the bi community. And to do that, we are fortunate enough to have a star-studded cast of members on the Bi Advisory Committee, 2 of whom are here today. Denise Penn from the American Institute of Bisexuality, and Gary North, who is with BiNet USA. And I'm going to let them say a couple words about themselves rather than me introducing them, so that you can get to know their voices and get to know them just a little bit. But to tell you, we have a number of very powerful folks from various organizations such as the Bi Organizing Project and the Bi Resource Center, also who are involved with BIAC. So BIAC is a great resource if you need help better understanding bisexuality as it relates to your ERG. So with that, why don't I let Denise introduce herself to you.
Thank you, Heidi, and hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Denise Penn, and I am a member of the American Institute of Bisexuality, which is a public charity that supports research and education that is intended to enhance and educate the world about bisexuality. by education and my career, I am a journalist and a social worker, and I have worked with hospice patients and such, and I've also, as a journalist, covered LGBT issues for the past 2 decades. So that's it. That's who I am, and I'm happy to be here.
Hi. Gary, introduce yourself.
Okay, hi, I'm Gary. I'm going to add a little something to what you see on the screen right now. I believe, Denise, you were president of BINET USA at one time, and so was I at one time. So we just sort of, we go through activists semi like water. It's a hard job because obviously it's all volunteer, and it can be lonely until last year, and then it seemed to explode, and we have had all sorts of activists come out, and it seems to be growing exponentially, so I'm very happy. I'm a journalist in that I blog. I was in regular journalism up until a few years ago. I don't want you to think that all bi people are journalists and all journalists are bi, although who knows. I am, however, at this time, I am a technical editor at a nonprofit research organization, and I am the secretary of the ERG where I work. And glad to be here.
Great. Thank you, Gary. I appreciate that. Okay, everybody. So what we'd like to do now is we'll just get started with our presentation. And to do that, I want to go back to our riddle that you saw. So in a lot of ways, this isn't just a polling question or even a riddle. It's actually a statement of fact. The reason is that most non-bisexual people actually don't realize how little they know or understand about bisexuals or about bisexuality. And in the workplace, this creates work environments that are anywhere from uncomfortable because people make unconscious statements about you to downright hostile work environments where people are making jokes about bisexuals and making bisexuals worry about whether they would be accepted if they were out of the closet. In fact, while coming out of the closet is generally equated in the LGBT world as something that increases your satisfaction at work, the research shows that for bisexuals, the more out bisexuals are at work, the less happy, the less satisfied they are at work. And that's directly because of the way they're treated by both straight and lesbian and gay coworkers, by the treatment, the isolation, and distress that they feel. So one of the things that we wanted to talk about today, though, is that as ERG members and leaders, you actually have the power to change that whole dynamic. What you can do as a member of an ERG, you don't even have to be an ERG leader, but you can actually create an ERG that's sensitive to the unique needs of bisexual people and help bisexual people recognize that they aren't just welcome, but that they are actually essential to the effectiveness of your ERG and your company. So that's something that you can actually do. Now, when I talk about how our ERGs are LGBT, what I want to do is illustrate a really poignant fact for you. At last year's summit, we had workshops on bisexuality in every workshop time slot. As well as we had conversations with bisexual people from the various ERGs in various safe places. So it was just bisexual people there. And we actually met literally dozens of people from the companies that are represented actually on this call today, as well as a lot of others who told us that while they do identify as bisexual, they wouldn't risk coming out to their ERGs because they would feel isolated, they would feel ostracized. And this is just in 2013. And so what they reported was that they are hearing jokes about and disdain for bisexual people. And they're hearing jokes from both gay people as well as from straight people. And so what happens is a lot of bisexuals will be closeted, and even if they're in the ERG, they might be closeted, say they're in a same-sex relationship, they might be closeted as a gay person and not admit that they're bisexual. Now, one of the things I wanted to say about that, though, is that most bisexual people actually don't join ERGs, sadly enough, and that's because they feel like they can't be themselves, which is a pretty sad outcome for both bisexual people as well as for the ERGs. So now, if on the other hand you create a bi-aware ERG, you can really create full participation. And a rule of thumb I wanted to share with you, because, a lot of us wonder, well, how bi-aware are the people in my ERG? How bi-aware are we? And a rule of thumb you can use for figuring that out is to look at your ERG members, their sexual orientation, the ones you know, and see how many of them are out as bisexual. We have data from the Williams Institute and the CDC, for example, that of people who identify as LGB, slightly over half identify as bisexual. So what I would say is that if in your ERG more than half of your members, or somewhere around half of your members, are out bisexuals, then you can assess your ERG as being pretty much on the bi-aware side of that spectrum. If you have significantly fewer bisexuals than you have gay men and lesbians, then I would say that you're probably more on the bi-clueless side. Not meaning to be insulting, it's just probably there's probably a better word for it than bi-clueless. Okay, so what will happen if you become a champion of bi-awareness? Well, you're going to actually explode the footprint and the impact of your ERG. Because basically what you'll find is as you become more relevant to bisexual people, they'll be joining your ERG. They'll be coming out of closets where previously they didn't feel they were safe, but now they find it's advantageous. So you'll be finding people joining your ERG from places you maybe even never expected you had allies, much less actually members of your community. Okay, so I know that that's kind of a bold claim to say that you can explode your footprint. So I want to unpack it just a bit. And what we're going to do the rest of this session is we're going to talk about the 3 questions on your screen that are about setting you on the road to fostering a bi-aware ERG. So the first one, what does it mean to be bi-aware, and how are you going to know when you get there? Besides how many out bisexuals, that's one question. So what does bi-awareness look like? The second question is, how can you be a bi-champion? What can you do? What can your ERG do? Are there specific activities that you can be involved in? And then finally, what's the value proposition of bi-awareness for the ERG? If you're going to champion this, after all, how do you sell others on it to get them committed to the cause as well? People don't change without a reason. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to give you some ideas about each of the questions. But I will say this is only the tip of the iceberg, to use the previous analogy. So we really encourage you to not just take this workshop, but actually come to some of the workshops at the summit to better understand how to create this sort of bi-aware ERG. And I'll give you some more information about what's happening at the summit so you can make some decisions about what you want to do. So what we're going to do is Gary is actually going to start off by talking to us about what bi-awareness looks like. So Gary, you can take it away.
Thank you, Heidi. So let's take a look at this slide, and I'm going to just let you read it for a few seconds. A number of people who are bi have found that as time goes on, and maybe all their lives, they have heard that bi means they're confused, they're indecisive, it's a phase, that sort of thing. And so they stay in the relative closet. And by that I mean it's easier to come out as gay, or it's easier to just be in the closet totally and pretend to be straight. And just so that we're all on the same page as what we mean by bi, when I use it and when a number of other people use the word, we're talking about one's awareness of one's own capacity to have attractions to certain other people, some of whom might be seen as male or female or transgender or androgynous or any number of identities. It's just that you're aware that you're attracted to someone else and that it doesn't conform to the promulgated social quote-unquote norm of opposite, that a man can only be attracted to a woman and a woman can only be attracted to a man. And there are people who are attracted to both or more or whatever. And the other thing that a number of people have problems with is break that down, bi and sexual. Bi seems to be a binary, either or, instead of both, or beyond bi. And that's why you saw the earlier poll that said about poly and fluid and any number of things. We can get into a separate discussion, or perhaps we will, about the political aspects of why we promote the word bi or bisexual. The other part of that word is the sexual part. You'll notice that the gay rights movement over the last 30 to 40 years has used gay and lesbian. And they've gotten away from the word homosexual because it had the word sexual in it. Whereas bi, people see the word sexual. And so it tends to have a connotation that bi people are automatically sexual predators, or there used to be a magazine that you'll maybe giggle at this. It was up in the San Francisco Bay Area called Anything That Moves. And it was playing on a stereotype. And the way the bi activists up there repositioned it, they co-opted the phrase and said it's basically a movement, is what they were getting at, to be recognized. So the problem with, or the challenge to ERGs, is to help the bi individual not have to fight this fight day in and day out. I am not confused. I am not going through a phase. I am not experimenting. And they need allies. We need allies. And if you go by the statistics that Heidi was referring to, you'll possibly agree that maybe half or more of the ERG members, or staff, or the world, however you want to think of it, are actually bi and not exclusively gay or exclusively lesbian. It's an individual thing, and it's a matter of degree. But the fact that we so often, and I'm from the media, I've done this too, it's so easy to say the gay rights movement, or the gay movement, or the gay community. It's 3 initials, 3 letters, it fits in a headline real easily. And instead of saying LGBT, now a lot of places say LGBT, because more and more people understand that phrase. But it also can make bi people and trans people and even lesbians invisible because it's alphabet soup. So that's why, I'll go to the next slide here, you have to be proactive as an ERG member or a leader to promote the inclusion. It's not enough to just say, in my opinion, LGBT. Well, we're an LGBT group. Easily said. But that's not necessarily proactive in explicitly saying bi or transgender or even lesbian. Each group should be recognized, or each identity should be recognized. And there are different ways to promote awareness. You can see some of the memes up here. And on your website, website for your ERG, if you have one, I hope you do, you can promote things such as this week's Bi Awareness Week. And, of course, it could always be year-round. These are just some of the things that were happening this week. The idea is you keep the B out there. Now, this goes back to the March on Washington, I want to say 1990 or so, when for the first time the B was promoted, as well as L, G, and T. And because alphabetically it shows up near the top of a list, if you show which contingents are out there, the B, all the bi groups, were listed first within the March organizations. So keeping the word out there, separate and apart from LGBT, helps. Now, I'm not saying get rid of LGBT by any means. That was a long fight to get those three other letters in there. But it does take an act. And so here's my point, that if you don't self-identify as bi, say you identify as gay or lesbian or any number of other identities, but you need to be an ally to those people who are bi and maybe aren't comfortable coming out because they're afraid of being rejected by their own community. Bi people feel, I think I can say this fairly certainly, bi people feel they are part of the LGBTQ and ally community. And because we feel that way, it's always difficult there's a fear of losing your community. It's only now really that bi people are sensing a growing sense of community of bi people. But there's always that frisson that you don't want to be too much a part of a separate community, because the whole idea of being bi, if you wish, is that we're a bridge to the other communities, or a bridge among the various communities. That said, there's something to be said about having separate awareness days within your ERG. So here's some examples of, today for example is Recognized Bi Men's Day within this week. And part of the reason for that is it's easier for, I'm going to make a broad statement here, it's easier in some ways for a woman to be out as bi, it's more acceptable than for a man in a number of circles. It's threatening for both men, straight men and gay men, to associate with bi men. And there have been a number of leaders over the years who, within the bi community, pardon me, who were women. In fact, I even wrote an article many years ago in the newsletter that I started about where the boys aren't, why so many of the leaders in the bi movement are women. And one of the reasons is it's so threatening in so many ways for a man to be out as bi. So just this week, in fact, I think just today, there's a new book out called Recognize, and it's a collection of stories about bi men. And but as you can see, most stigmatized, if you look at that spectrum on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see that polls show bi men are the most stigmatized by monosexuals. The only thing lower than that is DU. So this is the challenge that your ERG faces in trying to make bi people comfortable in being out at work. And I'll turn it over to, I think, is this Denise?
Thank you, Gary. This is Denise Penn, and the question up on the board now is, how do I champion bi awareness? And there are a number of ways to do that. And it seems like a simple question, but it really isn't, because many times people aren't even aware that there are bisexuals in their workplace, maybe even sitting right next to them. But there are reasons for that. It's very, very hard to be visible when you're bisexual. If you're gay or lesbian, people identify you by the gender or the assumed gender of your partner. So if you show up at the Christmas party with a person of the same gender, then they assume that you're gay. And if you show up with someone of the opposite gender, they assume you're straight. But if you're bisexual, it's very difficult for people to know that. And bisexuals really do suffer from a lot of minority stress as a result of that. Bisexuals experience minority stress and social isolation as a result of their marginalized sexual identities. And as a result of that, high rates of psychological distress, anxiety, depression, suicidality, alcohol misuse, and self-harming behavior. And you will perhaps see you perhaps see that there are a lot of disparities within bisexuals, a lot of psychological disparities, but it's important to note that the reason for that is the minority stress is very difficult to continue to work and carry on when you are nervous and afraid that people are going to discriminate against you and that you may even perhaps lose your job as a result of your sexual orientation. So some of the things that you can do to increase awareness within your ERG are, first of all, you can invite a speaker from a bisexual organization to a meeting and advertise that. And so that will, of course, allow people to see that you are, in fact, inviting a bisexual speaker. Bisexual people who may not be out will be there and feel more comfortable with that, and it will enhance education within your ERG and within your company. Second of all, you can show some films and videos and provide educational material on bisexuality at your meetings and advertise that as well. And then third, when you're promoting these events that you're going to have that feature bisexuality, it's really important to include that you're especially inviting bisexual identified people, their partners, their friends, and their allies. Because one of the things that happens is if you have, for example, a bisexual forum and invite bisexuals to come and present their issues or discuss their issues, it's very threatening to even show up at the meeting. Just showing up at a meeting that features bisexuality for some people would be very difficult, produce a lot of anxiety for the fear that people will ID them just by the fact that they're showing up. So if you include the fact that their partners and friends and allies are invited to participate as well, that tends to be really, really helpful. One of the reasons that it's particularly difficult in the workplace for bisexuals is because some of an out bisexual who dates people of different genders over the course of their career, it brings heightened interest from coworkers regarding their dating or romantic life, and much more than someone who may date someone of one gender, even if they break up and there's some drama. It brings heightened awareness, and that awareness can be translated by others that bisexuals are confused, they can't commit, they're flaky, they're immature, they're indecisive, and that translates into a stigma that sometimes coworkers and employers aren't even aware that they would hold this, of saying, I better not promote that person because they may not be able to commit to this. They may not be able to stick to this. So that's a really, really difficult issue for bisexuals in the workplace. The other thing that I finally want to point out is that bisexuals have a lot of the bisexual flag. Anytime that you're putting out the rainbow flag, the bisexual flag that you see up on the screen, which is pink and blue with the blended purple in the middle, that if you put that up too, you don't even have to include the B word. You just have to put that up, and people who identify as bisexual will see that and feel included. Some policy recommendations. When you are planning diversity training on LGBT issues, we found that including a separate module on bisexuality is very important, because many companies are doing LGBT awareness training, and the B gets lost in the mix. They're talking about lesbian and gay issues, talking about transgender issues, and it's just assumed that bisexual issues are included within that. And it's true that many issues are similar and are the same. Certainly, lesbian and gay people have suffered certain types of discrimination, and we do have a lot in common, and we do participate, and many of us have worked within the LGBT community alongside lesbian and gay people all along. However, there are some very unique issues, so it's very important to include a separate module just to highlight those. Okay. There we go. And last, make sure bisexuals are in visible leadership roles. If you have a executive committee, it's very important, if you have an out bisexual person, to include that person in a role of leadership. It sends a message to other bi-identified people in the workplace that you are bi-inclusive, and that person is more likely to be able to advise and suggest ways to enhance the programming of your ERG. Oh, and I should mention that photograph was taken at the White House last year on September 23rd, which is Celebrate Bisexuality Day, which was mentioned earlier. Last, never leave the B out and push back when others do. another thing that you can do to enhance awareness is to really push back when people do say things that are biphobic, especially in the workplace and especially in the presence of someone who may be struggling with their sexual orientation or may be bisexual and thinking about coming out. It's really important to note that all sexual orientations are normal. Relationships end and new ones begin, and that's normal too. And to educate that all orientations are normal and provide sufficient awareness. Okay, so I'm going to hand it back to Heidi Green.
Sorry about that. I said some brilliant things while I was on mute. Okay, so one sec.
So I think Heidi may have put herself on mute again. So we're going to look at, I know that she's going to come back on and go through the remaining of the slides here on the topic of how can you build your ERG through bi-awareness. So I know I'll skip through some of those for her until she gets back to us. So one of the things that you can do is attend the Bi-Leadership Day at the Out and Equal Summit this coming up in early November to learn how to make your ERG a bi-magnet, as Heidi has put it. And it's Getting Beyond the Sex in Bisexuality, a seminar on bisexual inclusion and turning allies into advocates. So that's one way you can help expand your ERG and pick up some tips on what you can do. And the Bi-Leadership Day is actually an all-day format. So I think it's from 9 to 5, and we'll have lunch served as well included in that. It is an additional fee to your registration, but you can always go back online to our registration site for the summit and add that if you wish.
Q, I am back.
Excellent. Woo.
Apologies, everybody. Phone died at an opportune time.
So I've got your slide up for attend the community engagement, so you can go from there. Unless you want to go back and check on the other one. I think I got that covered, though.
Okay, I appreciate that. The one thing I did want to say about the Leadership Day, the thing on Monday, was that we're going to be covering in depth how you as an ERG, as an individual within an ERG, can take the things we've talked about today just very lightly and really implement them in your ERG and make sure that you are able to create a bi-aware ERG. It's going to be very focused on what each ERG can do that's in the room. And so the seating is kind of limited. So if you are interested in that, I would encourage you to sign up right away to join that course. It's going to be very interactive and very interesting. Okay, so now let's go on to what's happening in the Community Engagement Series. So the Community Engagement Series is something that was started actually in 2012, although the name is new this year. And what it is it's based on the 3 advisory committees that Out and Equal has, one for people of color, one for transgender people, and one for bisexual people. So for the Bi Advisory Committee, our Community Engagement Day is on Tuesday the 4th. And what we're having is 2 workshop sessions, in the first session and the second. The first one is a featured panel that will have, Gary is going to be one of our presenters on it. We'll also have Faith Cheltenham from BiNet USA. She's the president. We'll have a presenter from Brazil who's in IBM's ERG, and Robin Oakes, who's one of our stars in the bisexual community, who will be on a panel that we'll have a brief presentation, and then we're going to break up into interest groups. so that people will have an opportunity to talk in some depth about an issue that they're particularly interested in. That's going to be a very exciting session, because then what we'll do is we'll all come back together and we'll report out. And then we'll have a Bi 101 session, because we've gotten so many requests to actually do a Bi 101 so people can understand about bisexuality. So that'll be workshop session 2. And then we'll also have workshops on bisexuality in each of the workshop sessions that are happening this year. So the other 4 sessions will be there. And you can check the program information for some of the details of that. So I would encourage you to do that. And then one of the things I also wanted to do, because we're talking about how do you build your ERG through bi-awareness. And one of the things I wanted to point out is that if you as an ERG stay aware of what's current in bi community, what's happening that specifically affects your bi members, and you help share that kind of information back out, then you become a resource to your bi community, and people will want to be more engaged in your ERG. So some things that are happening just currently, HRC is coming out with a report on bi youth. The Movement Advancement Project is coming out with a report on understanding issues for bi Americans. There's a lot that's going on that you can remain aware of that we'd encourage you to, just put it on your blogs, your websites, whatever. Just maybe have your bi corner. The last one on here, this Ask HRC about the Corporate Equality Index. HRC is looking at adding measures on bisexuality to the CEI, and we know that your organizations, rightly are proud of having 100% on the CEI, so adding bisexuality is going to cause all of us to step up our game a bit. So we encourage you to get a jump on that by going to this highlighted link, www.bisexualweek.com. And there, it's all about this week. This is Bi Awareness Week. But there's lots of amazing information. And I think as you start to explore that, you'd really learn a lot that you could share back with your organizations. And then there was a question in the chat, people who were looking for information about where to get more information. And what we have listed here are the 4 national organizations for the bisexual community. BiNet USA tends to be focused on advocacy and community building work within the bi community. The Bi Resource Center focuses on resources if you need, a brochure about bi books or a top 10 list on the needs of bisexuals or whatever it is you're looking for in terms of resource materials. BRC is your place to go. They also do community building, and both organizations actually have speakers that they can help you find. Then Denise's organization, American Institute of Bisexuality, does extremely high-quality research that is unparalleled in terms of the rigor and the clarity that they provide. They've explored some really important issues in bi community. So I encourage you to look at what work AIB is doing. And then we have the Bisexual Organizing Project, which is, they focus on the Midwest. They started in Minneapolis, but they are actually creating a lot of capacity building tools for bi community that are national in scope. And then, as I said before, BIAC, the Bi Advisory Committee, is lucky enough to have leaders from all those organizations involved with it, so you can always stay connected to us and we can help you find whatever resources you happen to need. Okay, we're just a little bit over time, Q, I know, but we can now move on to questions.
Thank you so much, Heidi. So we do have a few questions that were already sent in from our listeners, and you've answered one of them already, which was where to find more resources. But Bob was wondering, wanted to know, he was wondering if the bi bias is a generational issue. For example, are younger folks more accepting of bisexuals? And any of you who wants to grab that question, it's fine.
This is Gary. I'm going to jump in because that's a real big issue for me. It's something that we've been looking at for decades, and the conjecture was quite some time ago because BiNet USA was founded back in 1990, and there was activism even before that, and the conversation would tend to be that as people get acculturated, literally, to the concept of bisexuality, and younger people grow up knowing gay people, knowing lesbians, knowing what they know from TV shows that increasingly were having gay and lesbian characters, it became more like the air. They grew up with two moms. Their neighbors were more open. So in that sense, I think it was generational. We expected it to be generational, and I think this past year or two have shown how people now of college age and in their teens and 20s, it's almost second nature. It's like, well, why is this an issue? And they don't realize that for older people, older meaning 30-something, 40-something and beyond, this was stigmatized not only in the straight community, but in the gay and lesbian community.
Thank you so much for that, Gary. The next question that we have is from Colleen, and it's, what are some of the bi-specific workplace issues?
Heidi, would you like to take that one?
Yes, absolutely, I would. So there are actually a number of bi-specific issues, and essentially what we find for bisexual folks is that there is a stigma attached to, I think Denise is the one who said people are hyper-aware of our sexuality because we might be dating a man at one point, and then a couple of years from now we're married to a woman, and then we get married to a man later. So people are hyper aware of the sexual orientation of bisexual people. And what we find the fallout of that is that then people are told that they are flaky in a way, that they are unable to commit, and that, gee, how can I trust you with a $10 million budget? You can't even make up your mind who you're sleeping with. So people are seen as someone who can't handle responsibility, can't be promoted, in other words. And so that's one of the key issues that we find that a lot of bisexual people face. So what we do is we recognize that that's one of those things that actually gay and lesbian people don't face, whereas they might say, well, we face a lot of the same issues when we're in same-sex relationships, and that is in fact true, but we don't face that kind of stigma. Another thing that happens is that as you know, most of us in LGBT ERGs feel is that our identity is important to who we are. We want people to see us for who we are. And for bisexual people, particularly if we are monogamous, people of any sexual orientation can be polyamorous, and people of any sexual orientation can be monogamous. But one of the things that happens for bisexual people is that when we are monogamous and in a relationship, then our bisexuality is made invisible to a lot of people. So they don't see us for who we are. I don't know a bisexual person who hasn't been said to, well, you're actually a lesbian, right? Because you've been with her for 9 years now, so you've got to be a lesbian. Or you're just straight. You're just kind of wanting to be hip because you've been married to him forever. So our identity is actually denied by people, and we are treated like allies. And not that there's anything wrong with being an ally, but that's not who we are. It is not seeing our identity. So there
Thank
are things
you,
like
Heidi, sorry. Heidi, for answering that. We have one more, actually we have two more questions, and what I'm going to do actually is I have the email addresses for the folks, for both Lexi and Claudia. We have your email address, so what I'll do is have our guest answer that, and then we'll send you two emails with their responses to that. And if we can figure out some time or space on our blog, we'll go ahead and put all of these questions up and some answers to them as well. Right now we're about 2 minutes out from our closing, so I'd like to give each of our presenters today an opportunity to give quick closing comments. And we'll start with you, Gary.
Thank you. And it was wonderful to have this opportunity. I want to thank Out and Equal and Pat and Q for this opportunity. Hope to see you all in San Francisco, and keep on being proactive.
Thank you, Gary. Denise? Thank you, everybody, for calling in today, and I just want to add that, it's bisexuals just want what everyone else wants. They want to live their lives and do a good job in the workplace, and the focus on sexuality sometimes makes it difficult. At any rate, I will be at Out and Equal and be presenting a workshop, a media presentation on Thursday of the conference, which will allow people to see some of what discrimination looks like and actually visualize some of that. So I hope all of you who are coming to the conference can attend.
Thank you, Denise. And Heidi, your closing comments, please.
All right. I echo everyone's thanks to all of you for making time to look at this issue and to think about it. And I encourage everyone to sign up for the Monday session. It's going to be a really exciting workshop, the November 3rd one. And I also encourage everyone to contact HRC about making sure bisexuality is on the CEI. They always respond to encouragement. And I appreciate that where we're headed right now in bi community and the LGBT community at large, because I think we're really starting to move the needle, and we're really seeing that. And happy Bi Awareness Week to everyone.
Thank you so much, Heidi and Denise and Gary as well. And want to thank you all for joining us today. It's right on the hour, and we're going to wrap up our presentation today. Just to let you know, there'll be a short survey at the end of this call. When you close out, you'll get a little pop-up survey. If you could fill that out, that would be great for us here at Out and Equal. That allows us an opportunity to get more information on topics you'd like to hear in future town calls. Don't forget that our next town call is on Thursday, November 20th at 12 p.m. and it's going to be on transgender and the next steps. And of course, please join us for the 2014 Out and Equal Workplace Summit, which will be taking place here in San Francisco from November 3rd through the 6th. Thank you very much. And